Hi everyone. I'd like to welcome you to today's edition of the Our America channel. My name is Thornton Prayer. I'm a citizen, a patriot, and I care and love this country deeply, and I love you as citizens as well because I believe in what we're about. Today I'd like to talk about what I call bad political models. And what I'm referring to is what I've observed is that I think a lot of people have some really unusual expectations about how the political process works, about how our politicians function, and what they can expect out of what our political system does. A long time ago, I was fortunate to work for the congressman as an intern from the district I grew up in. I was only 19 years old, and I didn't really know much about politics other than the fact that we had a congressman, we had a governor in our state, and a mayor in our city. So it was an illuminating experience for me because I began to see how Congress works and how things work on a federal government level as well as on a local level as far as the relationship between our congressmen and what happened in our district. And one of the things I can tell you is that the people in Congress work very, very hard trying to serve the needs of most of their constituents. And that means that they can be dealing with thousands or even millions of people, and they can't read our minds. And yet, for some reason, many people, many citizens like you and I, expect our Congress people, our congressmen and congresswomen, to know exactly what we want. I know we write letters, we send emails, we go on the internet, we go to social media. So they do pay attention to what we have to say. But to realistically expect out of thousands or millions of people that a congressman or congresswoman is going to know exactly what you want and what you want to do or expect from them isn't realistic. I think more importantly, I think a lot of people don't understand how legislation gets passed. They think that a congressman or a congresswoman or the president for that matter just comes up with a brilliant idea one day, sits down and spends, I don't know, a few hours here and there, and boom, the legislation should be passed. And when legislation doesn't get passed or it comes out in some sort of way that was different from what was originally expected, that something is quote unquote wrong or bad, somebody did something that shouldn't have happened. And I'm going to say that that's how politics always has been. Some people have said politics is like sausage making, and I agree. Everyone wants to everyone wants to eat the sausage, but no one wants to see how the sausage gets made. That's how legislation gets created as well. And I think a lot of us, a lot of citizens have this belief that there's a magical solution to everything that happens, and that's just not reality. Politicians spend a lot of times in their staffs, and their staff people who are working very, very hard in the background trying to craft legislation. They spend a lot of time negotiating, putting clauses in, taking clauses out, editing things, and that's why it's such a difficult thing to do to create legislation. And so when I hear people say that, well, my congressman or my congresswoman did or didn't do what I wanted to do, or the president, as if these people have, again, magical abilities to get things done, simply isn't reality. I can tell you from working as an intern, like I said, I was just an intern. I wasn't someone who was on this permanent staff. I certainly wasn't someone in Congress itself. That it's a lot of work to try to do these things, to try to talk to constituents, to try to craft legislation, to talk to other people in Congress. We're talking about dozens, if not hundreds of other people, and try to figure things out. And so to expect these people to like I said, read our minds and then come up with perfect legislation, whatever that means to us, is not something that really matches what we expect. I think, like a lot of us think that our spouses should be perfect, or our parents should be perfect, or our children should be perfect, and then we get disappointed when they're not perfect because they're human beings. The same thing applies to people in Congress, or the president for that matter. That's simply the way things work. And so when I say I think a lot of people have bad political models, I think we don't understand, and we, in some cases, actively refuse to understand that things are messy, they're crazy, they're chaotic, that there's not magical or perfect solutions to things, and we get upset. And when it comes to political campaigns, we have the same expectations that don't match reality. A politician comes along and says that they're going to do something wonderful. And a lot of us believe that. Now, politicians have one major objective when they're running a campaign: to get reelected. So politicians will say what they think people want to hear in order to get reelected, knowing full well that they can't make that happen. But they say it anyway because because we want to be naive and we want to have unrealistic expectations, swallow that stuff hook, line, and sinker. So we vote for them. And then when they don't do what they say we expected, or they don't do what we thought they were going to do, we get upset about that too. And remember, politicians are people, just like you and I. They don't have special abilities. They make mistakes. They lie sometimes. But the question I want to put to you, who's the bigger liar, the politician or us, when we lie to ourselves with these expectations that don't square with reality? I can tell you that politicians, especially people in Congress, people who are on the staff of Congress people and other government levels, they get frustrated with us. They really do. They will say, and there's plenty of literature out there if you want to check it out, that we don't know what's going on, our level of understanding about the government is limited, and that we will demand of things that are not possible. There are surveys that are out today that many people, maybe even the majority of people, can't even tell us that there are 3 branches on the federal government. How can we be mad at our politicians when we don't even understand the basics of how our government works? But that's what people want to do. So I'm going to put it to you that if you want your politicians and our government to work better, that we have to work better. We have to be more engaged. We have to understand how things work. We have to understand how things work in reality. Politics is a messy, complicated, complex business. It's not pretty. It takes a lot of compromises. And if you have this expectation of perfection, that our politicians are going to be perfect, or legislation is going to be perfect, or the president's going to make things happen in a perfect way, that's not going to happen. I forgot to mention this earlier, but the same thing, with same unrealistic perspectives apply to the person who occupies the office of the presidency. Think about it. I think a lot of people make this false equivalence that the president of the United States is equivalent to the CEO of a large corporation. The CEO of a large corporation basically does have unlimited power. That's by design. But by contrast, by design, the founders of this country in the Constitution made the office of the presidency relatively weak because they were worried, and rightfully so, that office, if given too much power and not controlled by the other branches of the federal government, meaning Congress and the judiciary, could turn into a form of tyranny. So we want to have a complex, messy environment that holds the president back. But for us to think that the president is going to have unlimited power like the CEO of a major corporation, and that he or she, whoever this person might be, I'm not naming any individual, is going to have absolute control over the economic outcomes of this country, just, again, isn't reality. And people get disappointed when that doesn't happen. I'm going to tell you from observation, from personal experience, that is not true. When a politician, if he's running for dog catchers, the joke goes, if a politician is running for Congress, if someone's running for the president, and they're making all these grand promises, I'm going to ask you to be a little skeptical, not because they're lying, although they could be, but simply because they're trying to get elected and they'll say what they think is necessary. But again, I'm going to ask you to hold yourself to the highest possible standard of yourself, and to recognize that you have to be willing, if you want to have the government that you want, and you want to have politicians who are responsive to what you want, to look at yourself and to understand in a deep way how Congress actually operates, how the presidency actually operates, how the judiciary actually operates, and how they work together and sometimes against each other. They're supposed to work against each other to prevent tyranny in one form or another. So if you want to understand how things really work, I'm going to ask you to understand yourself and how you relate to these things and not expect unrealistic things from our politicians. I remember reading a great line a long time ago, about someone, from someone talking about other people complaining about the government. And they said people relate to the government like it's a monster that comes out of the hills periodically, causes a lot of damage, and then runs off. The government is us. If we're not involved with the government's going to do what it wants. Politicians are going to do whatever they think is necessary. But what I'm saying is that if you want to have a government that really works, then you have to work for it. If you have a job, you can't say, I'm not going to go to work for 6 months, but I want to get paid. That doesn't work. If you're married, you can't say to your spouse, well, honey, I'll see you in 3 or 4 months, do what you want, and come back to expect to have your marriage work the way it did before. But that's the kind of relationship a lot of people want to have with our politicians and our government, that we can disappear, maybe vote here and there, and sometimes not even vote at all, but then we get to complain. It's a great way to not be responsible. It's a great way not to be a full citizen. But I'm asking you to be a full citizen, which is to be responsible and to take ownership and to demand of yourself as much as you want to demand of your politicians and of your government. I'll stop here. Feel free to add comments and say what you think. I would enjoy reading what you have to say. Again, this is Thornton Prayer with the Our America channel. See you next time.